Cloud Valley is one of several sort of initiatives that have been taken by the Chinese government, and essentially it's a kind of partnership between private industry and sort of government sponsorships, which is sort of the way business works in China. This is a particularly interesting one, and they have a very ambitious goal to essentially create one of the largest cloud data center structures on the globe, and it's roughly 20 kilometers by 20 kilometers. It's massive. It's the size of a city. With a, I think they're saying something in the realm of potentially holding 500 million servers. To support that type of ambitious goal, you requires a dedicated power source. I think it's some of the developments in China have dedicated hydroelectric dams. Most are coal powered, unfortunately, but they typically have on-site power resources, which is very interesting.
And the goal of these, what is the goal of developing these, these huge regions, really?
The goal is in a lot of ways a kind of economic stimulus. They see that there's this transformation that has to happen in their economy from one of a sort of more traditional, for lack of a better term, factory-style economy to one that's more information-centric. So as you see this sort of progression from, the China that we've seen in the past to the sort of information-centric China that they hope to create, they need to support that. So what they're doing is in the hopes of building these sort of local computing utilities. So the computing power essentially will be provided in much the same way you'd see an electric utility. So let's say Harbin, for example. Harbin will provide the computing resources to the local economy. So the traditional businesses now have the ability to sort of leverage computing resources that are sort of subsidized and or provided by these kind of cloud centers.
Right. So why not just like build them into the cities themselves and like the cloud? Why do they need a cloud valley? Why can't they just say we welcome this development and let these companies from other parts of the world set up? It's China.
It's China. That's not something that's easily answered.
Yeah.
The structure of the Chinese business, the way it works in China is dramatically different than the way business works in North America, or let's just say Western type business economies. There's a heavy influence of the state in all things IT.
What advice would you give to people who want to explore China and the development that they're putting into their information infrastructure?
It's relationship based, so you'll never really get anywhere unless you have the participation, one, of somebody within the government, and two, you need to have a local representation. So the way most business happens in China today, at least in the realm of IT, is through joint ventures. So in order to really be successful, or even really have a chance to sell within China, you need to have cooperation of a local partner and a local government partner, or you essentially don't have a chance.
So how did you do that? Can you tell us your story about how that materialized for you in Enomaly?
One of the things that's interesting about Cloud Camp is it's been this sort of, for me, it's been the driver of opportunities. So a lot of people ask, why did you and Dave and a few others create Cloud Camp? And initially it was, to talk about clouds, but it sort of morphed into this opportunity where we see in emerging markets in particular, folks who are interested in clouds typically create cloud camps. So what it did was sort of introduce me to the sort of, for lack of a better term, movers and shakers in these various places, whether it's Brazil or China or the Philippines. And essentially it was a door opener.
Yeah, and so that allowed you then to just meet them in an informal kind of way. So you didn't need any kind of formal introductions, just because you were meeting them there and you could open those doors.
Exactly.
Right, and so tell us what's come of that.
Well, we've been busy working on a joint venture initiative in China. We have a number of significant wins within China, including a very large deployment around a IPTV content delivery environment, which will represent the ability essentially to create a kind of Hulu, I guess would be a best way to describe it, within China. We're talking about a deployment across 11 data centers, so it's quite exciting. We're also working on an initiative around our Spot Cloud platform, which will essentially allow us to sort of aggregate government-approved providers of capacity through a partnership in China. So it's quite exciting to be able to sort of leverage that type of opportunity.
So what other parts of Asia do you have a presence in then?
Well, We initially had quite a bit of traction probably about 2-3 years ago in Japan, but that the market in Japan sort of never really took off to the extent that we had hoped. Recent tragedies over there have really sort of put a damper on sort of economic growth there. We've also seen quite a bit of opportunity from places like South Korea, and actually, funny enough, the biggest opportunities we're seeing right now are in the much less developed countries such as the Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, and those places are really adopting and pushing for the concepts of cloud computing. Again, I think the driver is the fact they really have no infrastructure. So they see this as an opportunity to sort of do it and do it right.
So they're kind of furiously building right now, or what are they doing?
Well, they're building critical cloud-based infrastructure, data centers, the sort of laying of the fiber that is required for broadband penetration. Obviously, a big driver in these places is also mobile applications. Essentially everybody has a mobile device of some sort. So a lot of the sort of underlying use case is to help and equip that. So it's interesting.
Are they building commoditized infrastructures with be able to kind of differentiate on the application layer?
Differentiation is less important over there. I think open source drives a lot of the equation. Okay. Commodity components drive a lot of the equation. It really depends, because you see a lot of influence from some of the larger players in the market as well, in terms of them subsidizing some of the development costs. I won't name the names, but so you see a lot of those big players in there sort of doing things at a loss, essentially, which changes the economics a little bit, where you would never see that type of activity here in North America.
So who are you running into over there?
I would say the marquee brands, essentially. There's very little, funny enough, activity from the startup community.
You mean like Dell's, Intel? Who are these brands you're talking about?
So in terms of disclosure, Intel is our partner in China.
Right.
So we sell jointly with them. So you see Intel very active in China. You see Dell very active. You see IBM everywhere. IBM's actually quite involved in some of the largest cloud initiatives in China as well, including the Cloud Valley initiative.
They're involved in that.
Very heavily, yes.
How about in the Philippines and those other countries that are just kind of building this infrastructure?
Well, in the Philippines, it's interesting. Again, it's government sort of mandated, and what you're seeing, and I see this in other places as well, but the Philippines is a good example, where the governments are sort of dictating regulatory policies that say you need to have resources on the ground. We're sick of essentially using Singapore as our interchange, and what's driving a lot of the opportunity is sort of the government saying, let's build something at home. And that comes with all the things that go along with it. So the larger established organizations and companies tend to have a more established foothold in the policies and the way the policies get created.